The easiest way to get into macro photography is basically with extension tubes. And I picked these up for about $17 the other day on Amazon. And they're all plastic, but we don't really need to get a fancy set of extension tubes for macro work. We're also going to be using this lens adapter. It's a reverse ring adapter so that we can attach lenses backwards on a camera. And this is like, I think it's $7 or $8. And then I'll also be needing these step rings so that I can adapt different kinds of lenses to the ring adapter. And really, this is something you should always have in your kit. A whole set of these. I have a whole box of them. You know, I got this kit for about $16, give or take, for all of it. So it's definitely a must-have because you can use these for filters and other things. And then I have my trusty camping flashlight that I use. And this is approximately 250 lumens. It's kind of an average brightness. It's not super powerful, but it's good enough for most work. And then I'll also be using a TTL compatible flash. This is my Godox TT350O with the radio trigger, but you can use any flash that's TTL compatible with the radio trigger. And if you don't have a TTL compatible flash, you can use a radio trigger with a manual flash as long as you can control the flash output power. So I'll be doing it both ways, both in TTL mode and in full manual if you're not using a system like this. I also have here just a white sheet of paper and my tripod here. This is the Mefoto Air tripod that I've been recommending for a long time, just like the Godox flash. But this will come in handy for the second part of the macro photography. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to take a couple of baseline pictures with just a 14-42 kit lens so we kind of have a feel of what the images look like without doing any kind of modifications. And nothing fancy. I just found this old hard drive in the basement. So to get a picture of some of the circuitry on here. And then, of course, the obligatory coin. We'll take a picture of this penny. And there's actually some interesting things on this penny when you get a really good macro shot of it, which we'll see in a minute. So I've done a full reset on the camera, so we're just going to start with that. And I found that if I zoom this all the way into 42 millimeters and just get in as close as I can. Let me see, let me set a focus point in the center. And I'll just back up. There, right about there. Okay, good. And then let me get a shot of the coin, and I'm just going to do a vertical on this. Right there, very good. All right, so those are the baseline pictures. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and attach both of these extension tubes. I have a 16 millimeter and a 10 millimeter. So let me turn the camera off. And it just goes in between the lens and the camera. Now that the extension tubes are attached, I mean, the basic idea of these tubes is it shortens your focusing distance. So you lose infinity focus, but then you gain close focusing ability, which in turn, you know, gives you the magnification of macro. But before we start taking any pictures, let's change a few settings. So let's go into the Super Control panel. And first thing I'm going to do is turn off image stabilization because the extension tubes have changed the focal length of the lens effectively. And then I'm going to choose single point autofocus. We'll just start in the center. And I'm going to change this to continuous autofocus. And I'm also going to turn off face detect. And I also like to just make things a little bit sharper because I'm shooting JPEGs. And I'm going to add a little contrast. So +2 sharpness and contrast. And then I'm going to change this to just large fine so that we get a little better image quality on the JPEG. And you can shoot large superfine or raw, whatever you want. But for demonstration, we'll just do JPEG. And now we need to go into the menu and change a couple of things here. And as you can see, I did a full reset before starting. I don't think there's anything here. So let's go down into this. And I'm going to change the default ISO setting on this camera to 6400, and that'll give us a little more room with the shutter speed, which you'll see later. And then I'm going to turn off the noise filter for the JPEGs so we get the maximum amount of sharpness. And then I'm going to go into the release menu, and I'm going to turn off release priority for continuous autofocus, because you remember we changed it to CAF. So this tells the camera not to take a picture unless it thinks it has focus. It doesn't always have focus, but usually it does, and it won't take a picture until it thinks it does. And then one more thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the touch screen from touch to take a picture to touch to focus. Because when you're doing macro work, a lot of times you have to move the focus point, and it's just easier to do with a touch screen. But I don't necessarily want it to take a picture every time. All right, now what I do is I like to zoom in to about 42 millimeters on the kit lens, and then point it at the subject, and then just kind of creep in slowly like this until I see it's in focus. And right about there is right. Then from here, I'm going to pick the focus point that I want, so right about here. And then at this point, I let the camera do most of the work. So I just half press the shutter button to see if I can acquire focus. Let me see if I can get in any closer. No, that's good. All right, so right there. And then I can take a picture. All right, let's take a look. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I mean, the depth of field is very, very shallow, but we can fix that too. I'll show you in just a minute. All right, now let me look at the picture info, and we're at 1/100th of a second, ISO 4000, and at f5.6. Now, I normally like to be at about 1/160th of a second or faster if I can, but that's what we can do pretty much handheld in auto ISO mode, etc., because of the lighting here. If you're outside, you're going to be at like ISO 200 at much faster shutter speeds. All right, so how much magnification did we just achieve there? Well, there's a very easy way to calculate this. And I have my ruler here. And I just take a picture of the ruler using the same focal length I use, and then get in as close as I can, just like I did with the hard drive. And it looks like right about there is it. All right, good. Let's take a look at that. And I would say it looks like I captured about 20 millimeters. So to calculate the magnification is I just take 17.3 and divide it by 20. Divided by 20. So I got a magnification of 0.865 there. So not bad. It's not quite 1:1, but that's pretty good. Now we can do a little better. Because what I can do is I can zoom out. Let's try 25 millimeters. And then I'll do the same thing I did at 42, is I'll just kind of creep in until I see everything in focus. I'm not going to be able to get in any closer. So what I'll do is I'll just adjust the zoom ring until I see what I want in focus. There. And then what I can do is just half press the shutter button and let it do the rest. Right there. And let's take a look at that. All right, very good. But still we're at ISO 3200, 1/60th of a second. So there's probably a little bit of motion blur in that shot because we're at 1/60th of a second. But again, we'll correct for that in a minute. Let's see what kind of magnification we got at that distance. There. Let's see what we got there. That time I captured, looks like, we'll just say 15 millimeters. So what does that work out to? 17.3 divided by 15. So we actually got a 1.15 magnification. So now we're at like the true macro kind of distance, right? Or magnification. Because most people, they consider macro when you can get 1:1 or better. Everything else they call close-up photography. Now, that's pretty cool image, right? But we can do better because look what's happening here. We have a high ISO, so it's not as sharp. There's a little bit of grain in the image because of the high ISO and possibly because of the slow shutter speed. And also we don't have a very good depth of field. It's too shallow. I'd like to get a lot more things in focus. So what I can do is just add some light. And let's see how much light we can add just with the flashlight. There we go. Now we're at 1/1000th of a second. ISO 200. So that's plenty of speed. Oh yeah, much better. I can even see the dust right on that little resistor there. Or whatever that thing is. But we're still dealing with shallow depth of field. And also the lighting is a little bit harsh, right? And it's not spread out too well. So all I have to do is use this little piece of paper to diffuse the light a little bit. And let's see what that looks like. And I'll just move the light around until it looks about right in the camera. Yeah, I kind of like that. That looks pretty good right there. All right, so the light spread out a little better. And looks like it focused a little bit north of our previous focus point. But the problem we're still really having is not so much the light anymore, it's the depth of field. And the only way to improve the depth of field is to increase the aperture. But if I increase the aperture like this, it's going to kill all of the light and I'm not going to have a fast enough shutter speed, or I'm going to be extremely high ISOs. And we're capped at 6400, so that's not even an option. And we wouldn't want it as an option. So this is where we bring in the flash. So I'm going to attach the flash, and I'm just going to be using TTL mode. All right, put this in TTL mode. I'm going to do a test. All right, very good. I got the test shot. Now, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to diffuse the light from the flash the same way. And then just creep in onto that area. And let's take a look at that. Much better. A tiny bit of diffraction in there, but you can see that the depth of field is much wider now compared to the previous shot. See that? All right, so let's say you don't have TTL and you need to shoot this manually. That's no big deal either. So all I have to do is put the camera into manual mode. And like I said, I like the shutter speed to be about 1/60th of a second. So I'm going to do that first. 1/160th. And I'll make sure I'm at ISO 200. And everything else looks good. And we're at f16. All right. So I'm going to put the flash into manual mode. And I'm going to start at the flash's lowest power. Just to see what I get. And then just increase it from there. So right now I'm at 1/128th. Oh, let me move my focus point back down to the lower thirds. Let's see what we get. All right, that was way too dark. So what I'm going to do is just increase the power from 1/128th to 1/2 power. So let's see what half power gives us. So I went from the weakest power to the half the total output of this flash's power. All right, let's see how that came out. Much better. Much better. A little bit of clipping. So the idea with the flash in terms of workflow, you start at the lowest power that the flash can output, and then I go to half power if it's too dark like that, and then I work my way back. If it was too bright at half power, then I can go back to, say, 1/8 power, and then just kind of go back and forth until I narrow it down to the perfect exposure. But I usually get it right within 2 or 3 shots. You don't have to like try every single flash output power, but if you kind of go in that sort of sorting direction, you'll get there much faster, I think. And that's all there is to the extension tubes. And obviously if this was on a tripod, it'd be even more steady and you'd have much better control. So let's get out the tripod, but instead of using the extension tubes, we're going to use the reverse ring adapter or reverse lens adapter. So I took the lens off, but I left the extension tubes on the camera. And now I'm just going to attach this reverse lens adapter onto the camera, onto the front of the extension tubes. It just screws like that. And then on the other side of this, I have a 52mm ring. And this is just a sort of an arbitrary ring size that I picked because I have a lot of Nikon glass that I like to adapt. But that's why you get these ring adapters or step rings. So I can adapt and reverse mount this kit lens. So I've already stacked them up. And I'll give you a little close-up of this. You can see it's just multiple step rings. Now this reverse ring adapter, it allows me to, instead of putting the lens this way, I put the lens on this way. And then I just screw it on, just like any filter would screw on. And let me go ahead and attach the camera to the tripod. There. Now what I'm going to do is I need to do one more thing in the menu, and that is turn off. I have to do this upside down. Let me go into display and turn off sleep mode, like so. And then I'm also going to turn off the EVF. Where is that? Built-in EVF. I'm going to turn the auto switching off. And the reason for that is because I'm going to be moving my finger over the front to touch the focus, and the EVF has its own little eye detect, so it's going to constantly switch the live view on and off, which I don't want. I want it to stay on. And I turned it into sleep mode. I turned the sleep mode off because I want the live view or the live view to stay on and not go to sleep, because sometimes it takes a little while to manually focus, and you don't want the live view screen to just turn off right in the middle of your focusing. Now the way I have this tripod set up is I can adjust the legs up and down until I get to about the right height, just as a start. And let's use the penny this time. And I'll put the penny down. And let's see. I'm going to zoom out to 42. And as you can see, I'm just zooming like this, right? And you can see I got good focus just turning the zoom ring. But I need to level this tripod somewhat, so I'm going to use the camera's level meters. So I'll toggle that by pushing the info button. And there, now we have the level meters. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the level meters. I think that's the pitch. So it looks like I need to come up some this way. A little more. Good. And then I'm going to level the camera. I'm just going to tilt it. Looks like I need to go this way just a little bit. There. And tighten everything down. Now I know the camera is perfectly level with the table and completely flat. So now I'll just move the penny into the location. And I'm going to zoom in and out until I get focus. And it looks like I'm zoomed out to 42, but I'm still not getting focus. So I either need to get closer or farther away. Most likely I need to get a little bit closer. So now I'm just going to adjust this until I get closer. I'm going to go just a little bit past and then lock it in. And then adjust the focus until that looks tack sharp. And I just like to use my eye to do this. I can also punch in the zoom. So I'm going to use the multifunction dial. So you hold this button down and I'm going to go into magnify. Let me pick a different point here. Let's magnify on Lincoln and then do the best we can. There. Whoops, a little bit off. Perfect. Let me punch back out and I'm going to straighten the penny best I can. Well, let's look at the ruler and see what the magnification is at this point. I'm at 13 centimeters. So my magnification now is 17.3 divided by 13. I'm at 1.33 magnification. Now, when we're on a tripod, the other thing I like to do is I like to put in and use the self timer here on the shutter. 2 seconds is probably enough, even though my table's not very sturdy. 2 seconds, there we go. And I know I need to use flash because I'm in manual mode and I can see that the EV meter is blinking. So the exposure we're seeing on the live view is not the actual exposure. If I were to take a picture now without the flash, it would be almost pitch black most likely. And we'll use the same power. We'll leave it at 1/2. So reset, there we go. And let's do that. All right, that looked a little bit too bright, so let's take it down. Let's try 1/8 power. Good, that's perfect. And if you look closely, you can see a lot of detail in this penny that maybe you didn't know existed before. Like, did you know there's a little etching of Lincoln inside the Lincoln Memorial on the back of a penny? I never knew that until I did this type of photography. And then you can see all kinds of other fine detail on the steps and in the columns. It's really amazing how much detail is there. Now, just like we did on the hard drive, we can actually get a little bit closer because remember right now I'm zoomed in at 42 millimeters on the kit lens. But let's take this down to 25 again, just as a baseline. And you'll notice everything is blurry, so I need to bring the tripod or the camera a little closer to the subject. So I'll just adjust this again until I see it's in focus. And we're getting there. Okay, good. So, we move the penny slightly. Well, let's look at the ruler. What kind of magnification are we getting here? Wow, this is going to be almost too hard to measure. There's 1 millimeter. We'll say we're at 3.5 millimeters. 17.3 divided by 3.5. We're at 4.94 magnification, so almost 5-time magnification, or 5 to 1. That's pretty amazing. All right, let's take a look. That looks pretty good. All right, and that's the basic workflow, and from here you can kind of experiment. You can try different focal lengths on the zoom range. You can try different zoom lenses, like I have the 40 to 150, and in practice I found this gives you a little more working distance but less magnification. But if you need more working distance, and you know, this is a good option. And then a lot of people, they like to buy these vintage lenses. Like this is an old what is this? This is a Takina 28 millimeter f2.8 for Nikon, but it has a 52 millimeter ring size on it, which is why I bought a 52 millimeter ring adapter. But the advantage of using these kinds of lenses rather than our, you know, Zuiko lenses, like these digital lenses, is that these lenses have a physical aperture ring on them. So we can adjust the aperture and get more depth of field if we need it. And then one more thing you can do if you need more depth of field is you can do focus bracketing. And I have a separate video for focus bracketing. That's a whole different topic that I get into because you need to use software and things like that. There is, some of our cameras do have focus stacking as well built in, but that only takes like 8 shots currently with the cameras that I have. So I still prefer to do the focus bracketing and then stacking them in software later. So check that video out if you want to do focus bracketing in addition to macro photography this way. And I think you can create some terrific results because there's so many videos out there that have terrific like macro ideas, right? Macro photography ideas. Like Peter Forsgaard just did one. And then I saw one by DP Review where the guy was using an ultraviolet light and with some flowers. It was really cool. So check those out. But in the meantime, I appreciate you guys watching, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.